Good afternoon, Saitlanders. How are you? We hope that you're well. I want to apologize publicly for some videos that I posted recently concerning violence in Hillbrow. I took a couple of days off, and when I came back to work, these videos had been sent to me also just in error, just by mistake. It wasn't deliberate. The person who sent them is somebody that I know and trust very much. They'd obviously been caught out by somebody else who was out to stir trouble. Anyway, they were videos of violence in Hillbrow, and I reposted them, which is not good for Saitlanders. You know, it's not good if I make mistakes like that. But more to the point, my conscience bothers me. I don't know, maybe we all worry about different things, but it just seems to me that if you don't take ownership of errors like that, if you pretend that they didn't happen, that the matter's never resolved in your own mind. You know what I mean? Just in your own mind, the matter is never really resolved. So for my own sake as much as anything else, I want to apologize for that, I did publish, thinking that, you know, in having been off for a couple of days, that I'd missed it. This drama had taken place. I've got these videos, oh, let's put them out, you know, first thing, and then it's kind of too late to withdraw them by the time you find out that you've published rubbish. Yeah, that's about the long and the short of it, really, guys. Of the video topics. Okay, let's do another one, because this is so short it's hardly worth it. Coca-Cola Company wants employees to be less white. As you guys know, we have the Saitlander system is about die nou, the now, and die dan, the then. In the now, we have a system of groups, which theoretically each group is composed of 10 families, 10 households. Theoretically, this is theoretical. You've got to have a theoretical structure. It obviously doesn't always work that way in different regions and suburbs and so on. And 10 groups makes a region, and 10 regions makes a province. I suppose it's a structure very similar, as I've used the analogy previously, to the Boy Scouts of South Africa. So many scouts or padvinders or whatever in an area, and they make an area or a region or a district, and so many districts make up a province, and so many provinces make up South Africa and Botswana and Lesotho and Namibia make up Southern Africa, whatever it's called. Okay, and then die dan. Die dan is the departments that are preparing for our crisis in different ways. So we, Afdeling Buitelands, these videos that we do for internal communication are because the nature of Afdeling Buitelands work, the nature of the foreign sections work is such that we can't fill 8 hours a day. You know, there are just not that many conversations to be held every day. And therefore we do this internal communication, but really our job is to communicate with the Buiteland and to liaise and so on. In the now. In the then, our job will be to do a very similar thing, but far more intensively, and on a larger scale, both on a larger scale, extensively and intensively. So we have a pre-prepared team of people who are Afdeling Buitelands dan. Just as there is Afdeling Sekerheid and Afdeling Weerbaarheid and Afdeling Logistiek and so on, or department I should say. Those are all full departments, we're just a section. Right, so one of our people, Afdeling Buitelands dan, one of the guys who's part of that team preparing for the communication efforts that we will have to make under circumstances of crisis, contacted me this morning, and he said, look, isn't there some misunderstanding about this Coca-Cola thing that everybody's talking about? I said, no, there isn't. And the thought occurred to me that if he, who's a well-informed guy, very thoughtful guy, clever guy, if he could make that mistake, then perhaps there are other people who don't know about this, so I should cover it. Right, so what happened? It was reported on the 23rd of February, today being the 14th of March, so exactly, or almost exactly 3 weeks ago, that a Coca-Cola company employee blew the whistle on some training that Coca-Cola USA, Coca-Cola, not Coca-Cola South Africa or Coca-Cola Malawi, whatever, Coca-Cola. Let me see if I can find something here. The Coca-Cola were using LinkedIn for some training. You guys, most of you will know what is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like Facebook, but for business, right? For people in business, for businesses and professionals and so on to connect. Here we go. February the 23rd, blah, 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 blah. Okay. They were using LinkedIn for some training, and there is a LinkedIn course called, it exists, Confronting Racism. And the Confronting Racism course basically urges people to be less white as part of the company's diversity training. So this is by a commentator called Karlin Borisenko. Karlin. In the US and other Western nations, white people are socialized to feel that they are inherently superior because they are white. Reads one of the slides. So Carlin's telling us about this slide that was sent out by an internal whistleblower. Right? So somebody on the training course, somebody from Coca-Cola USA, Coca-Cola, the head office, the main guys, blew the whistle on this training that they were having to do. Reads one of the slides sent from an internal whistleblower. Another slide suggests try to be less white, with tips including be less oppressive, listen, believe, and break with white solidarity. You know, this is reminiscent for me. I'm going to say something now which some people are bound to misconstrue, but it's their problem, not mine. It is misconstrued. It's deliberately misconstruing or stupidity. It reminds me of the slavery story. It reminds me of I went to see a guy, a very, very important meeting, the top guy in the world, in his field, which is an enormous field, in Las Vegas in January, February 2019. In fact, it makes me think I should do another video on that too. Anyway, so I fly to Las Vegas from wherever I was, Pennsylvania or Washington, and meet this guy and have to take a taxi back to my motel on the Strip, you know, the famous Las Vegas Strip. I was staying right at the end in a little motel, a dingy little motel. I wasn't in one of those famous hotels that you see in the movies on that road. And lo and behold, my taxi driver is a black woman. Get in the car, and she says to me, "What do you do?" So I obviously didn't say I work for a very conservative organization or whatever. I gave her my description of Sakelanders was something like an organization devoted to, protecting people in the event of a civil war in South Africa, and things are not going all that well, and we're a little bit afraid that they could get out of hand. And this woman nearly, I don't know, she she almost jumped on me in a good way. You know, I mean, and like, she kind of, I remember her sort of, as she was driving, whipping her whole body around and saying something about the new South Africa, something that wasn't going well, murder rates or something like that. And she proceeded to launch into a sermon on the ignorance of particularly black people, but not only, concerning slavery. And she said to me, did you know that the slaves were actually captured by black people? It was black people that were doing that. And then they were transported. The first trade that was done in the slave trade was to sell these people to Muslim slave traders. And she said, nobody knows about this stuff, and why don't they know? And this is why I like to read and inform myself, because if you watch the mainstream media, you never learn anything, and they just tell lies, blah, 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 blah. And anyway, it was excellent. And yeah, the statistics around slavery are fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And as I say, somebody's going to misconstrue this, but it's the way that it is. Whether you like it or you don't like it, doesn't matter. All of the capturing of slaves was done by black people. Now, some people will say to you, yes, but it's only because there was demand from whites that the slave trade existed. Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. There's an excellent site called Necrometrics. Necrometrics. Look it up. Go and have a look at the slavery figures and the dates involved. The black African slave trade existed between Africa and the Islamic world long prior to it having any substance in the New World. Look, it's just a fact. Somebody said to me the other day, yeah, but what about the slaves in Europe from 2,000 years ago? There was practically none. Slavery in, let's say, in Roman times, for instance, was based far more on Gauls and Celts. In fact, not so much the Celts, of Ireland, because they were deemed useless. That's why Julius Caesar and his successors never invaded Ireland. The people and the place were just deemed too useless. We are a special people. Anyway, so back to this thing. And all of the trading was done with Muslims. Long before any whites had any slaves on plantations in what's called Santo Domingo and Haiti and Hispaniola and the south of the United States and Brazil and so on. It's just a simple fact. All right, so far the blacks are responsible and the Muslims are responsible. We know that we're responsible for everything. Wait, I'm coming. And there is an excellent, excellent piece of literature. This is where people start to squirm, get uncomfortable in their seats. But I'm just going to say it because it's worth saying. I am what you might call heavily pro-Semitic. Everybody who comes to my house sees all sorts of Jewish literature on the bookshelves, and they kind of look at me sideways, And I think that may be where the rumors began when there were attacks 4 years ago claiming that I was actually Jewish. I think it began somewhere there. I don't know exactly, but I suspect. But that doesn't change the fact that the majority, overwhelming majority, of the slavery operations from the Muslims. Right, so slaves are caught, let's say, in the middle of Buganda, the Buganda kingdom. They're then sent to the sea. They're taken by Muslim slave traders to the ports. From the ports, they're sent to, let's say, Louisiana. I beg your pardon. By Jews. Overwhelmingly. Overwhelmingly. But somehow we're to blame for everything. The blacks, the Muslims, and the Jews, but somehow we're to blame. This is not an anti-Jewish polemic. You only have to come to my house. Number 54 Protea Street, Van der Kloof. I'm simply making a statement of fact. So when I read this stuff, I think to myself, you know, this Coca-Cola thing. How? Not that whites are perfect. We are sinful creatures, and Christ has made that clear to us. Our very Savior, the one who rescues us, has said, "You are vrot." But, okay, so listen to this. To be less white is to be less oppressive, because so to be less white is inherently, intrinsically, elementally to be less oppressive. The more white you are, the more oppressive you are. To be less arrogant, be less certain, be less defensive, be less ignorant. That's right. We are ignorant. Whites are ignorant. We don't know anything, apparently. Be more humble. To be less white is to, sorry, the structure of the thing is not consistent. So, okay, so it's to be less, to be more humble, to listen, to believe, to break with apathy, and break with white solidarity. Here is one of the biggest corporations in the whole world explicitly saying that our people must be less white, and to be less white is to break with our unity, our solidarity, our sticking together. I made a note here for this video, and I haven't kind of memorized it. Therefore, it is become apparent that matters in the world are truly worse than many of us ever expected that they would be or would become. And every man can see for himself that we are headed to a crisis. And it is no longer the time for endeavoring to convince recalcitrant people. That's people who, you know, don't, I'm not forthcoming, don't participate, don't. People who are recalcitrant to our cause, our beliefs, Christianity, the cause of the Caucasian peoples of the world. It is no longer the time for endeavoring to convince recalcitrant people of what is obvious. But it is the time to turn our attention to preparation, regardless whether a crisis is a day, a week, month, or a year away. Regardless. Because things are so bad. We can't afford to be haggling and negotiating with people who think they know better, and who won't see the obvious of what is happening to our people in the world today. Regardless whether a real crisis is a day, a week, a month, or a year away, things are bad enough that we can't waste time on them, and we must turn our attention to preparation. So I invite you to join the rest of us in devoting ourselves to the physical task. And as chess is not a sport, so too it is not a physical effort to sit behind a keyboard. The physical task of uniting to act in concert to cope with the hard times promised by the events that we are witnessing. This has now been a much longer video than the ones that we usually make. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, like it, share. God bless you and goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.